What's up, my Housewives relatable listeners? It's your girl, Stella, coming to you once again to talk about it all. Hi, guys. Hi, my relatable listeners. I hope everyone is doing good. For my part, it was my birthday this week, so it's still my birthday. It's my birthday week, and as a proud Cancerian, I have to shout out. You know, we like to shout out our signs, so I have to say happy birthday to all of my crabs out there, all of my fellow Cancers. Happy birthday, because you know the season is almost over as of this weekend. So a lot of things have been happening in the Bravoverse again. So we're just going to jump right into it. And obviously, I'm going to talk about what everyone has been talking about for the past week, because as you know, the ghost from Christmas past, Jill Zarin, is back. She was back on Bethenny Frankel's podcast last week, and I have to say that I was very shocked. I was very shocked to see them, you know, do a podcast together, and it was like sort of an intimate setting, if I understand correctly. Jill met with Bethenny at Bethenny's place, so it was actually at her house. And I have a lot of feelings about that podcast, and I'm just going to be honest with you guys. New York, like the original New York, with Jill Zarin, Bethenny, Luann, Ramona. It used to be one of my favorite franchises back then. I thought that the ladies were hysterical. And Bethenny, season 1, was my favorite. I find that she was the most relatable. You know, she was not as rich as the other housewives. She was kind of just like, you know, up and coming and sort of sweet. And, you know, she still had a little bit of that sharp tongue, but she was funny and hysterical. And she was like struggling, right, in New York. Like New York is just like, you know, you have all of the ladies that were kind of like socialites. And then Bethenny was some sort of like trying to get in that circle as well. But you could tell that she was one of the most relatable ones on the show. And I really liked Bethenny when she was season 1, season 2 on the show. And to be quite honest, guys, I like Jill Zarin too. I did. Like, I know she's a little bit controversial at times because of what she did to Andy at some point in time. She went on Andy's show and recorded him. And Andy didn't have any knowledge of that. And then she later on released that tape, and she was just like, oh, this is not how it happened. And she provided her version of things. And I think Andy Cowan has been quite upset with Jill since then. And to be quite honest, guys, I don't think that Andy is over it, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. So I'm a big Jill Zarin fan, no matter how people feel about her. To me, Jill, she just represents New York. Like, she is just this woman that, I don't know, I think she's just very New York. You know, she reminds me of a big sister that you have, right? And she's very motherly and friendly, and she gives people good advices. You know, sometimes she tends to smother people a little bit, but I'm not mad at Jill Zarin. And to be honest, guys, I was always a fan of the way Jill Zarin introduced herself back in the earlier seasons. I don't know if she still does it that way, but every time she would meet someone, she would say, "Hi, I'm Jill Zarin." And I don't know why that stuck with me until this day because of that show. When I introduce myself, I always say my first and my last name, thanks to Miss Jill Zarin. So yes. Now, on the podcast, I don't know about you guys, but I know I heard Up and Adam say that the podcast, like the conversation between Jill and Bethenny, sort of gave him anxiety. And I've heard a few people say that as well. And I couldn't agree more. To be honest with you, I was listening to it, and you know, there's a lot of things that Jill said to Bethenny that Bethenny did not seem to know at the time. And she was like, oh my gosh, like, really? This is like disgusting. This is gross. You know how Bethenny talks, right? But to be honest with you guys, like, it's not even just about like anxiety. I found that it was really difficult for Jill to explain without being interrupted how things had transpired in the past or her version of events. Like, I find that, this spunk and this spark and, all of the reasons why I'm speaking for my part anyways, because I realize that a lot of people here are huge Bethenny fans, and I don't want to take that away from them. And, I still like Bethenny to a certain extent, but over the years, I just find that sometimes she gets to kind of like, she's into herself a little bit when she speaks, right? And it's like, Bethenny, relax, let people talk, let people speak. It's like, I cannot have a conversation with someone like that. It's just too manic. It's like, Bethenny, you don't have to be right all the time. Bethenny, you don't have to be the one speaking all the time. Bethenny, you don't have to be the person who leads the conversation all the time. It's like, I find that she used to be a better listener. And over the years, I don't know if it's because of what she's been through with that divorce and, the friendships on the show and all of that stuff. But man, like, Bethenny, like, sometimes I would just be like listening to this and guys, it's like an hour long. So if you haven't listened to the actual conversation, I did. It's just over an hour long. It's unedited. It's uncut. It's raw. It's real and all that stuff. But man, sometimes I felt like, oh my gosh, like, are we somewhere in the minefields, right? Because Bethenny just can't stop talking and interrupting. Like, it was so bad on her part that at some point in time, I felt like we need Louis. Okay, we need Louis Ruhelas. We need Louis to make... I'm just joking, guys. But I did feel like we need somebody like Louis to come in between and say, Bethenny, you got to let her talk. You're not listening. It was that bad. It was that bad. I'm telling you, and I felt like Jill was way more composed and she was trying to get her point across. And you know what? By all means, Jill, she's no punk either, right? A few times she said to Bethenny during that podcast, at least that's how I received it. Jill said, are we going to talk about this? And it was kind of just like her classy way of being like, can you let me talk, please? Right? And I wish there was more of that on Jill's part, because seriously, it was quite annoying. And I'm just saying, Bethenny, you ain't no Joe Rogan. Okay, you have a podcast and you have opinions and, people listen to you and, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. And, I'm not saying that there's no value in what Bethenny is saying. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, Bethenny, it's just an opinion that you have. And be a gracious host, like, if you are inviting Jill after all of these years to come and talk on your podcast, the best that you can do, the least that you can do, is just let the woman talk. She's been trying to talk to you for all of these years and it's never worked. So now that she has the chance, just let her talk. There was a lot of like, yeah, but that's not important. That's not important. We're not talking about that. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about that. Let's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's very difficult because not everybody communicates the same. Not everyone communicates the same. Sometimes you can talk to somebody, like, for example, like Dorit. A lot of people say, oh my God, she is so long-winded. She is so long-winded. But at the same time, that's her way of communicating, right? So it's like you may find that, okay, she provides a lot of details and not everything that she's saying is important. Or like Erica likes to say, you say a lot of boring shit. I say a lot of important shit, right? So I'm just saying we all have our ways to communicate. And I just find that Bethenny, although it was a great interview, guys, I'm not going to take that away from the ladies. I just think that Bethenny could work a little bit more on her listening skills, especially if she wants to be in that space. Not that Bethenny needs my advices, obviously, like, she's had her podcast for so many years and for a long time. She doesn't need to listen to me. I'm just giving you my opinion when it comes to this. Just let people talk, it doesn't have to be so, it feels aggressive. And I think that that's the reason why, in prior seasons, when you had Bethenny and Kelly Killoren Ben Simone, I think that's the reason why they never vibed, right? Because, and I can't remember who made that analogy a long time ago. And you know, it's not to say that Kelly was like perfect, right? Because obviously there were problems there with her as well, at least in the edits. But somebody said at some point, like, why do you feel like you need to take an AK-47 to kill a fly, right? And I think that in Bethenny's case, that resonated with me so much, like a long time ago, because I was just like, Bethenny doesn't know how to adapt her way of speaking depending on who she's talking to. She's always intense. She's always like talking to you like rapid fire, you know what I mean? And it's like, for some people, that might be too much, right? And at the end of the day, I don't think that Bethenny is like, you know, I've seen her in the past, right? I've seen her try to do that with certain people. There's certain people that are not intimidated by Bethenny, believe it or not. Maybe on her podcast, some people might be, or maybe when she was on the show, some people might be. But there's other people out there that are not intimidated by Bethenny, and they have no problem letting her know you need to relax when you're talking. But I don't, I don't know if you guys saw. There was like an interview a long time ago. Like, I think I'll try to pull it up for you guys, but I'm doing like a whole sidebar. But you know, when Bethenny used to have her show, Bethenny, her talk show, at some point in time, she invited Omarosa, and you know, I'm not trying to talk about Omarosa here. Like, you know, Omarosa, she's very controversial based on, you know, Celebrity Apprentice and all of this stuff that she's done in the past. But what I'm going to say is, when you invite someone to come on your show, again, you have to be a little bit more gracious and you have to be open. And I think she thought that she could just come for Omarosa and that Omarosa would back down. And that just didn't happen. And, you know, Bethenny got owned on her own talk show by Omarosa. It was not a pretty scene. And to be honest with you, I laughed a little, right? Because and I find that Bethenny kind of did this on her own podcast with Jill. A few times she said, no, this is what happened. Like, this is what happened. I know this is like, you know, sometimes she's like very firm and positive and, you know, she's like, this is what it is. Right. And, it's like the end all be all when she speaks sometimes. And then Jill was like, no, this is actually not how it happened. This is not when this is not when and where you signed your contract or negotiated it. I heard you say like through the grapevines that this is how it did, but you were actually with me and you were on the phone and we were doing this and that and the other. And then Bethenny was just like, you know, super adamant. And she's like, no, this is not. And then she's like, no, let me remind you this, Bethenny, because I have no memory, which is something that Jill Zarin has always said, by the way, on New York Housewives. But she says, this I remember, and this is how it took place. And then Bethenny's like, oh my gosh, yes, you're right. Like, this is how it took place. Bethenny did the same thing with Omarosa on her show. She was arguing with her and she was just like, I never said this. And if you could prove, so, you know, they went back and forth for about like a minute. And then Bethenny said to her, if you could prove that I did say that and I know that I didn't, I will pay you $10,000 right now. If you could prove that I did say that. And then Omarosa was like, oh my God, she was so happy. And she's like, this is like the quickest, fastest, easiest $10,000 that I'm about to make right now in a few minutes, because I'm about to prove you that you did say that, Bethenny. And then they pulled up the audio, and then Bethenny's like, oh my gosh, I did say that. And they're like, yeah, and now you owe me $10,000. So I'm just saying, like, you know, for the people out there that like to say Bethenny is always right, like, she is not always right. And this is not to say anything bad about Bethenny. She's not always right. You know, she likes to talk as if she's right all the time. But just because she believes that she's right, it doesn't make her right for real, right? And to be honest with you, you know, maybe Bethenny was like, you know, when she started on the show, she was with that guy, Jason, like, and that guy was a mute. I don't know if he even said 2 words during that first season. Like, the guy did not talk. He didn't talk for the entire season, Jason. The first one. And then the second one that she was with, I can't remember if she had like boyfriends in between, but the second one, Jason Hoppy, the second Jason that she ended up marrying and having a kid with, that guy, I don't know why, he reminds me of Perry Farrell. You know, he does. Well, Perry Farrell with his original face, not his face right now, but his face back in the days, the lead singer of Jane's Addiction. He reminds me of him a lot, actually. But anyways, that guy, right? So she was with him. It's like, I don't know, she was with a mute and she's the one doing all of the talking. And then when she was with the other Jason, he talked too, but on the show, not as much as Bethenny, but at least they were able to have conversations. And Bethenny and Jill's friendship, to me, it was great. You know, it was great. Like, I miss seeing them on the bed talking. Because to me, that's when the show seemed more genuine. You know, like it felt like they had a real special, intimate, not in that way, like intimate, like an intimate friendship, right? Like just very close friends. And Jill just seemed like, you know, the older sister. And Jill has sisters as well. So she has sisters. She's close to her sisters. And you could tell that she has that ability or that desire to want to be a sister to somebody else, especially like a person like Bethenny. And it was great to hear Jill say on that podcast that she went to bat to have Bethenny join the show. Like she went to talk to executives and all of that stuff because she was just like, you know what? She's not a housewife. She doesn't have a husband, but she would be great for the show. Bobby told her that and she went to bat for her. And I kind of understood, you know, I understood when Jill was saying, listen, I know it came across as if I was jealous of you, but I wasn't jealous of you and I didn't care about the money. What I wanted was to be a part or be included in every single things that you were doing. And when I felt like you were kind of like slipping away from me, then I had some sort of feelings about it, right? And I'm not saying that that's absolutely normal to feel that way. It's not like, it's not like Bethenny is her husband or like, you know what I mean? It's like a friend, right? But sometimes girls, they feel that way, you know, they can feel like that. And I could like probably in Jill's mind, and she didn't exactly say it like that, but my interpretation of it is kind of just like, you know, we're so close and I love you so much and I'm happy for you, but I want to be included in everything that you do, even when you don't need me. And it's like sometimes, you know, I know a few people that are like that. And it's not to say that they're bad people, but Bethenny used the correct word when it came to Jill. Like she is smothering, right? And it could feel a little, you know, maybe Bethenny was suffocating from her friendship with Jill at that point, right? It felt just like too much. It's like, Jill, I don't belong to you. Like I can do things on my own. Like we are not like Siamese cats. Like we are not attached by the hips. You know, I want to be your friend, but I want to do things on my own as well. And maybe Jill had a little bit of a problem with that at some point in time. But if you guys recall when they were both on the show and then they had that falling out, Bethenny was really trying to make amends with Jill. Jill wasn't having it at that point. And I remember a long time ago, she was saying, hey, this is going to make great TV, right? Like, I'm not really mad, but let's discuss it on the show and then we'll make up on the show. And this is my vision for how this is going to play out, right? And, when it didn't happen like that, like Bethenny was trying. And then at some point in time, she had enough because she said, you know what, Bethenny, we are done. You know what? I wrote a whole bunch of things that you did to me. I didn't bring it with me because she got ambushed at, I think it was Ramona's or Luann. Anyways, so, you know, after trying so many times, Bethenny was just like, you know what? I'm done, right? Now I'm done. And then all of these beautiful things or important things or milestone things started happening in Bethenny's life. And then that's at that point that Jill realized that she had gone too far because now Bethenny was pregnant after, you know, she had been trying for all of these years to be pregnant. And she said, all I always wanted was to have one kid, not 2, 3, 4, 5, just one kid. That's the only wish that I have, is to have one kid, right? So those are the things that her and Jill used to talk about on the bed. So when Jill found out that, oh my God, my best friend now is pregnant and now we're feuding, how am I going to go up to her and congratulate her? Like, that's when she realized that, things had gone too far. And then Bethenny, with the relationship, the tumultuous relationship that she had with her father, her dad was sick and then he died. It's like, sometimes your ego in friendship, it can ruin everything. And that's basically what happened between Bethenny and Jill, because Jill wouldn't forgive her at that point in time. And then things started coming around for Bethenny. And then Jill thought that she could just go back and make it nice. And Bethenny was done. Right at that point, because real life, it's not a reality TV show. People have real feelings, right? So Jill couldn't manipulate that part of the situation. So, it was sad to see their friendship go like that, down the drain back then. But one thing that I found that was very surprising was the fact that, the big revelation when it comes to Bobby's funeral and how that took place, and how production and Andy and all of that had a big, their hands are quite dirty when it comes to all of this. And I'm sure Andy has responded already and said what his version of events was. But, I don't believe what Andy says all the time either. He is good for TV. I think he's great for the reunion, although sometimes it seems like he doesn't always watch the show. But, he's good at what he does. But what people also need to remember, Andy is a businessman. And I don't think he has the girls. I think somewhat he does. He has the girls, not necessarily best interest. I think he cares about them to a certain extent. Right? I think where people get confused sometimes is how much he actually does care about them. And I'm not sure it's as deep as people think, right? I think he's ready to do certain things that are questionable at times when it comes to the Housewives, if that means more money for Bravo. That's my opinion. But anyways, I digress. So it was really, really sad to hear that basically they played both sides, and Jill had no idea that Bethenny was really coming during the funeral and film and all of that. But just for the kick of it, I went back to watch that episode, and Jill said that the ladies, the other cast members, were a little bit upset that Bethenny was planning on showing up to the funeral and having the cameras there. And they felt some sort of way about it because they're just they don't have a relationship. They haven't talked to each other in years. And then now Bethenny is going to be the one who's going to film, and, they're going to make it all about her as if she really cares about Jill. Meanwhile, she never talked to her for I don't know how long, so they had discussion when it came to that. And I'm sure there's more than what they discussed on that podcast. However, I could see why some of the ladies could feel that way when it comes to Bethenny. I think at the reunion when they discussed it, I think they had a valid point. I think Ramona had a valid point, because even me as a viewer back then, I kind of felt like that too. I was just first of all, I felt a certain way just seeing the funeral, not, just seeing cameras at a funeral. For that, I'm just you know what, guys, it's not necessary. You know what I mean? We didn't see the actual funeral, but just the fact that the cameras were there and Bethenny in her beautiful dress and then Jill, it's that's maybe just not a moment for reality TV. It's just live that in private. It's someone's passed away. We don't need this, right? We don't need to make it about Bethenny and Jill. And although Bethenny said something really nice to Jill outside on the sidewalk, it was still kind of production made it seem like it was about this big reunion or mending of friendship or closure between two old friends, right, at Bobby's funeral. So to me, it's not necessary, really, right? So anyways, so when they talked about that, you could see there were some things that Bethenny was just like, wow, I had no idea. And Jill as well, she was just like, no, I'm telling you, they don't have a release. I didn't sign a release to have my voice on there. And you know what? That guy or that person told me that no, there's no release. But at the end of the day, Bravo was counting on you not suing them. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. Maybe sometimes they do things like it's not always kosher, right? So that was a little sad. But Jill seems to be in a better frame of mind these days. She doesn't seem like she needs Housewives to validate who she is anymore. She seems happy to me. So that was really good to see. And I don't know where things will go from there when it comes to Bethenny and Jill. But to be honest, guys, I was hopeful back then. Like after the whole thing with like Bobby passing away and then Bethenny going to Jill Zarin's house to visit like with her daughter, Bryn, right? And I remember this very specifically because she was dressing up. She was dressing Bryn up and she was just like, we're going to go and visit an old friend of mine and her name is Jill. So apparently that scene, Jill had not told a soul, right? She had not told anyone that Bethenny was coming to film with her. But Bethenny was actually filming that day and it was portrayed on the show. So that was another thing that Jill was not aware of. And I was just like, wow, you know, that world of reality TV could be a little sneaky sometimes. Definitely. But
you were upset about me, but you took publicly to talk about. What's interesting in Hollywood is that people.
No, I emailed you after you did The View. And it really hurt my feelings, I have to tell you, because I thought we were friends. And after I watched it, I thought, why would she go on The View and badmouth me? And
I don't think I badmouthed you. I think it was Joy or Sherry Shepherd. Someone said to me,
Sherry,
you're doing your own reality show, so you're like Omarosa. And I said,
no, my career is real, and my book and my brand, and her, no. She just went on there to be a villain. Like that. And I was like,
like me, I can have someone.
Why would you say that?
Well, first of all, we knew each other through The Apprentice. I mean, we never had dinner. We weren't friends.
I'm going to tell you something. I actually thought we were friends. It's interesting that you would say you didn't think we were friends. When you called me, when you were on, you contacted me through somebody when you went on Martha Stewart's Apprentice. You kind of reaching out, and so maybe you were just trying to use me to get information. You could call that what you want, but to go on, and Sherry's my friend, to go on The View and badmouth me to my friend is bad form, Bethenny.
Well, okay, if you're going to talk about something that happened, let's get the facts straight.
Let's read the.
I said that you were known for being infamous. And then I spoke about myself. I said that I had 2 New York Times bestsellers.
You never said I have a real career. You never said that.
I said that you didn't. I
read the quote. You said I have a real.
Can we just get the quote? Someone must have it.
I have a brand, and I
will give you $10,000 if I said I have a real career.
$10,000. Yes. And you know what?
If I said I have a real career, I will give you $10,000.
This has turned out to be a great day.
If I said, I think, no, actually, I have a brand. I have 2 New York Times bestsellers. I have a cocktail. Omarosa,
our memory
infamous.
Must be going. Let's have.
I said use it for being infamous.
Paul, he has my phone.
Okay.
We can pull it up. This is great. I'll use that money to help
church.
the folks. Yes, on Skid Row.
That would be excellent.
Because I know I'm about to get $10,000.
I think she's an interesting example because she used her time on a reality. I did say I have a real career. I had $10,000.
Woo!
I said I have a real career. I have a brand. I have a very popular cocktail. I have 2 New York Times bestsellers. I have my own show. Okay, so I owe you $10,000, and I meant every word of this.